Afternoon, everyone. It's good to see you. I'm Bernice Basti Martinez, and I chair the Education Committee. I want to call this meeting to order and let the record show it is 2 p.m. We want to begin with the introduction of the committee members, followed by the board staff. And my committee colleague to my right, if you'll introduce yourself.
Yes, good afternoon. Kenneth Maxey, Public Board Member.
And you've met me. We comprise the members of this committee. Board staff, we have our executive officer with us. If you'll please do us the pleasure.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. My name is Elaine Yamaguchi, the Executive Officer. With me, of course, our staff, our Assistant Executive Officer, Vicki Lyman, over here. To my right, our NEC, Jessica Gomez, our Education Analyst, Geraldine Marcino, and somewhere around here is our other NEC, Margarita Valdez. And there she is.
Thank you. We also have legal with us. If you'll introduce yourself, please.
Thank you. Kenneth L. Swenson, Senior Staff Counsel, Attorney 3, Counsel for the Board.
Thank you. We want to start our meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. Everyone please stand. I'll ask my colleague board member to start the pledge.
Ready? I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Ken. We also have with us several representatives from approved schools. And since there are a reasonable number, which I say few, we'd like for them to stand and introduce themselves, if you please. I'll start with my far left, and that would be your far right.
I guess that's me.
That's correct.
Everybody, my name is Scott Neal. I am the director of the Vocational Nursing Program at
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Melody Cochran. I hail from Pasadena, California, and I am the director of Integrity College of Health. And I have my education director here with me too, and my name is Melody.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Shirley Concepcion from Carrington College in Sacramento.
Thank you, everyone. We want to start with an update and discussion regarding the strategic plan, and this is specifically in relationship to the Education Committee. Executive Director, if you please, Officer.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. What we have going on right now is a rather unique situation. We have something of a tandem approach of strategic planning. We have, of course, our current strategic plan, which was approved last year, 2017, and carries us through the end of 2019. And at this point, the board is also starting the process for our strategic plan that will start in 2020 and carry us through 2023. Now, with regard to education, we have a number of goals in the current plan that the staff have been examining to bring us forward to examine how much we've managed to achieve and chart out what we will work on with the board and committee to carry us through. For example, one of the strategic plan goals of the current plan was to increase our unannounced site visits. And while our NECs have done a tremendous number of very good site visits, they've been balanced between announced and unannounced. And so as a result, what we would probably want to do with our committee and their expertise is talk further about the next year of what the board and committee would like to accomplish what kind of performance measures we'd like to establish, maybe a target goal of numbers, or at least a threshold of when the last visit took place, for example. So we'll be working with the committee to fine-tune those, to pull out some actionable items. And then we will also be working, again, with the expertise and direction of the committee and the board to look at what we have as our current plan and what needs to be carried forward to the next plan. So as the board embarks on its work in the next few months, and we'll be adopting, hopefully, our new strategic plan by the end of next year, so that it is ready and takes effect on January of 2020.
Any questions for the executive officer? And I will accept public comment at this moment.
Well, actually, if I may, by the way, just as a footnote, our existing strategic plan is on our webpage. So for anybody who wants to take a look at that, it's right there. You can have a closer look at some of the goals that were set forward last year. We hope to provide some updates and some information as we go forward.
Also, in relationship to that, there might be interest in what is the purpose of this committee? And periodically, we try to review the charge of the Education Committee as well as all of the other committees that are part of the board. And if you'll bear with me for a moment, and it seems quite appropriate since we're talking about strategic goals, to just quickly read to you what is the role of the Education Committee. The Education Committee of the Board of Vocational Nursing and Psychiatric Technicians is comprised of a minimum of 3 members that are appointed by the president. At this time, we only have 2 because there is a board vacancy for an educator. And once we get the educator, you will see this committee have 3 persons. The committee is crucial to the achievement of the board's mandate to ensure the protection of the consumer. The committee is charged with gathering public input and making recommendations to the board for action relative to the education of safe and competent vocational nurses and psychiatric technicians. In doing so, the committee considers the health care needs of the consumer and applicable research. The committee considers entry-level competencies necessary for safe and effective practice and curricular content and hours critical to that achievement. The committee considers established professional standards relative to education, healthcare, and the nursing profession. The committee considers the compliance of pre-licensure educational programs with statutory and regulatory requirements and establish professional standards. When noncompliance is substantiated, the committee makes recommendations for action to the full board, up to and including modifications in the program's approval status. The committee makes recommendations on issues relative to the National Licensed Vocational Nursing Exam and the California Psychiatric Technician Licensure Examination. Further, the committee advises and makes recommendations to the board relative to the post-licensure education, of vocational nurses and psychiatric technicians that is required to ensure continued competence. In doing so, the Education Committee assists the board in ensuring the educational preparation, licensure, and practice of a safe and competent workplace. Such workforce is imperative to ensure the delivery of safe and effective care to the consumers. That is what this committee is about, and in essence, it becomes our charge as a committee. All of the work we do is in response and directly related to that charge. Committee, that's you and I at this moment. We've been reminded of what our tasks are. Let's move to the next agenda item. Oh, hold on. We have the opportunity for public comment related to the charge. Seeing none, we'll move to the next agenda item, which is the discussion and possible action to make recommendations to the board regarding program placement on provisional approval. And we'll start with staff comment, please.
I am bringing forward Integrity College of Health Vocational Nursing Program. On June 5th of 2018, they requested a class, and at that time, I noticed that there was not enough faculty and facilities to give them that class. It was also determined that I should make a site visit just to check to make sure what's going on. So the site visit was conducted on August 2nd and the 3rd. At that time, 3 violations were identified. On August the 10th, the program was sent notice of the violations via email and certified mail, and instructed that their response was to be back to me no later than August the 24th of 2018. On September the 5th, the board received 2 complaints from which stated that there was an instructor who was not approved by the board who was teaching classes within the VN program. On September the 10th, the program owner called me and stated that she had been out sick and that her daughter had stepped in to manage the program. Her daughter, within her best intentions, had taught a course within the VN program. It was not approved. So the recommendations is to place the program on provisional approval, to require the program to provide documentation verifying under penalty of perjury that all currently enrolled students scheduled to graduate in October and November have completed all required clinical experiences in pediatrics and OB. 3, the documentation must be submitted prior to the submission of the student's record for completion of the program to the board for processing of licensing. However, the Assistant Director of Education has been tutoring students outside the classroom, and I believe that sentence is in the wrong place. I'm sorry. Require the program to admit no additional classes without prior approval for the board, and require the director to submit 2 reports. One would be due September 1st, 2019, and September the 1st of 2020. I want you to know that this program only has 47 students, and their pass rates have been good. Their pass rates are 78%, which is the state is 76, so they're 2 percentage points above the state. During the evaluation, what I did notice was that they did not have faculty and facilities, and to my unknowledge, the class before them, which had been submitted with showing that they had enough faculty for the classes that had been admitted and facilities, apparently they had not, or they had lost some of their facilities. And so the students had not received OB and pediatrics for the two classes that are going to graduate in October and November. They had received some simulation and just child development for pediatrics, but they had not had any sick child, which is a requirement, and they had had no OB with patients. Additionally, I found out that the students in their clinicals were being met with two or three different groups of students being taught by the same instructor at the same site. And so the instructor, instead of having the obligation to teach one class of students on one level, she was actually teaching all three groups, and there was more than 15 students at the time. So this was a violation. So we did find 3 violations at the time. One was that they had not notified the school of faculty who had either resigned or was terminated. They did not have clinical sites for the pediatrics and OB, and they had more than 15 students in a clinical site. And it was after that we did identify that an instructor was teaching incorrectly. It has come forward after that the instructor that was teaching tutoring and not a class. And so this has been identified. Okay.
Thank you. And your recommendation based on those findings?
The recommendation is what I had read earlier, is yes, that they would be considered for placement on provisional approval.
Would representatives of the school please approach? And we have microphones for you. If you'll please make sure you speak into the microphones. If you have comment and about the report, this is the time. Please identify yourself. Number 1, do you agree with the report?
My name is Melody Cochran. Good afternoon. And I'm the director, and I would like to say the information is correct, but there are also other side to it. So do I agree? I agree with the report. Do I agree that we should be on provisional? Of course not.
I'm Bella Masip, and I'm the director of education. Just a little history real quick. Me and my mom started this college our first class was in 2007. And now we have class 36. So it's been an honor to be able to provide this education for our vocational nursing students and medical assistants. My mom, unfortunately, she's hugely passionate about nursing, and in June started becoming very ill and felt ill. She was the director of the vocational nursing program, and became deathly ill. And so thank God she's recovering, but she's still under a recovery process. I took over the duties of running the college, which in itself, just the administrative portion, is more than full-time. And it did come to our awareness that there could be possibly an issue with one of the classes that may have been cheating with the instructor, and that's another issue. But we wanted to provide tutoring for that class on Monday and Thursday evenings, so I set that up and provided the tutoring for them to make sure that they were that if they had any questions and be able to review anything. And that, I told my mom about that, the owner of the school, and she's still confused. She's recuperating, but I told her that about the complaint and that I had been doing the tutoring, and so she thought that she would be helpful to call Jessica and say I was teaching and how can we fix this. So in explaining, I wasn't teaching a course for the program, but I was tutoring the students. I have a master's in nursing, master's in public health, and I'll be submitting the information for a additional faculty for to help out in the future with any teaching. I think that's, and the one other thing, I agree with the report for 90% of it. The combination of the students that we did have in the facility, an instructor had gone on vacation. There's 2 classes that are very close. They're about 6 weeks apart. One has 10 students, one has 5 students. They were combined in clinical for approximately a month for the instructor to go on her vacation. She went to her country. And we didn't have more than 15, but I agree that that was way more for an instructor to have. But it was a combination of those 2 classes that are very close. They're doing the same content on their classes. So we're talking about the combination of classes with one instructor.
Yes.
Yes, I would like to say a few things that I have sent in an application for Ms. Vela to be approved. I'm just waiting for transcripts, and I have no question that I'm sure that it will be approved for additional faculty. And the only thing that's holding it up right now is Pasadena City College that hasn't forwarded her undergrad transcripts. So that should be taken care of. And at no time during my reign did she ever take over a class, teach a class. I have heard her talk on the phone about anatomy, and she was helping the students understand some GI anatomy, only to help them out with the upcoming test. And I perceive that as tutoring, not educating or teaching. The next point I'd like to comment on would be I'm brand new and I'm still trying to learn. And I'm working as fast as I can. I have hired 3 additional faculty, and they are very good, and they're able to lecture and to do clinical. So the faculty, and I'm still looking for more faculty that could specialize in pediatrics, because right now I'm the pediatric and maternity specialist in the school. So I have acquired 2 pediatric sites, and we're just waiting to get a couple dates. So I'm sure that the class that we have and the classes in question will have adequate subacute, outstanding pediatric education. However, it might not be in time for their actual graduation date. However, they will have it, and we might have to move their graduation date by 1 or 2, maybe 3 weeks at the most, but they are going to get an education. As far as the maternity, I'm still working on finding some sites. We are really impacted in Los Angeles, and we are surrounded by major universities, and everybody has grabbed up every type of maternity site. We are waiting to hear back from 3 potential maternity or female reproductive type situations. So I'm on that every single day, and I will not let that die. So they are going to have a good education. Plus, we are doing a full onboard simulation application. We're intending to submit that to Miss Jessica, and that we're hoping that that would be adequate for at least few of the hours. What else? I will submit everything necessary. I have submitted partially what Mrs. Gomez was requesting. I just don't know how to do the rest, and I will learn by the end of today. So I will be submitting all those documents that she needs. So we talked about pediatrics. I was just approved for a site this morning, and it seems like at least once a week I am sending her either a faculty or a site application. So I'm really good at those right now, those applications.
Thank you. And we're sorry to hear about the health of your mother. And thank you for making sure we understood that. If we are hearing you correctly, and we'll ask staff to help us with this, all of the findings have not yet been addressed.
No, they're not completed at this time. They have been partially addressed, but not corrected, no. Only one is fully corrected.
Okay, and if we hear you correctly, none of the findings, 1, 2, or 3, has been corrected to the point where the finding would be removed.
The one has been removed. There's 4. One can be removed. That is the notification of the termination of faculty has been corrected. The other 3 have not completely been corrected, no.
Okay, I believe we're on the same page then. Let me ask my colleague if he has questions.
I do, actually. Thank you both for your presentation today. And again, my condolences for everything your mother's been going through. So, Ms. Cochran, how long have you been over this program?
I was just approved in July 20th.
Okay.
And I received a letter the 23rd, and I attended the meeting down south. So not very long, but I'm very eager to learn and do.
Excellent. And then, how many instructors do you have currently, total?
I think about 12. I have a list of them. We have actually a lot of instructors. We have about 6 or 7 that can handle clinical, and we have 1 full-time, and 3 that can lecture, and I can cover any class. Anytime.
And then my third question is this a full or part-time program?
It's a part-time.
Part-time program.
Well,
Is
we
it
consider
full-time?
it full-time. It's 26 hours per week, and it's considered a full-time program.
Okay, thank you. And
May I,
then,
may I make a comment also on
Absolutely.
on Ms.
Sure.
Melody? When my mom became ill, there was a slow progression, but then all of a sudden she crashed and hemorrhaged and all that. So I notified Jessica that we don't have a program director right now, and I needed to find somebody really. I'll find somebody, and she said you can't have a program without a program director. Melody was working with us. She also had some interest in becoming a program director or assistant program director, and I asked her, and she said yes, and she jumped right in, and this was a very, very difficult situation. So it's a lot of learning at the same time while then she had the board visit, right? As she's good and approved, she had the board visit, and Jessica came down. So it's a lot of doing the job and learning at the same time. So it's a really interesting learning experience, that's for sure. But she's jumped in and she's been attacking it 100%. I just wanted to let you know that she was kind of thrown in there.
I appreciate that.
And I'm sure I can fix a violation number 2 in the next 48 hours. So then we'll only be at 2.
Okay. And then my one just final question I had for either one of you is, why are you so against the provisional for to 2020, as long as you are given that opportunity?
Well, I like being off of provisional, and I like working one-on-one with Jessica. She's been wonderful, and I appreciate all her support. And every school I've ever worked for, which is about like 8 vocational schools now, when they're on provisional, it's usually assumed they did something wrong or their grades and their scores are low. We happen to have a good score, and I just like to keep a record clean, especially for Miss Martin, because I'm trying to take over, and it's her baby, and I feel like I want to do the best job, and I just took over, and I don't want to be on provisional. So, is that a good answer? I don't even like the word provisional.
May I make a comment? You asked the number of faculty they have. Would you please rephrase that to how many full-time faculty they have?
I would say that a full-time faculty right now is 1 person, and we don't have that many classes. We have a lot of teachers that want to teach more as soon as we can get some more students. We have 2 sisters that we just hired. They both have bachelors, and they are fabulous, wonderful educators. They work at, they're supervisors at subacute units, and they are ready to teach, but we don't have enough classes right now.
Excuse me for the interruption. When you said you just hired several individuals, have they been approved as faculty? How recently was that approval?
In the last month?
There's been a few within the last month. They're all part-time or substitute.
Yeah.
And one of the challenges I have, and actually I'm sure the board has, when we say there is a minimum number of faculty and they're all part-time, one of the questions becomes, what happens with students who have full-time needs? Part-time faculty frequently have other dedicated employment, and they are not 100% focused. Not that our full-time would be, but when one is full-time, there's some assumptions that go along with full-time employment.
I agree with you.
The additional concern becomes, I believe I heard you correctly, please correct me if I'm wrong, that when there are more students, there would be more faculty hires. And the fact that a class or 2 classes were collapsed, we can't be assured that the students in the 2 collapsed classes are getting what they individually needed at the time before the classes were collapsed. In other words, if one class is on a certain path and another class is on a different path, combining them does not ensure all of the students will get all of the necessary information, curricular requirements, and individual help that they might have received in the first formed classes. One reason is because the instructor would be in a different circumstance. Do you understand the purpose of provisional? We hear you when you say you don't want that classification. We are really charged with protecting the safety of the public in the state of California, which also covers the licensure, training, and preparation of future, in this case, vocational nurses. So I ask again, do you understand what provisional means? We understand you don't want it, but do you understand what that entails?
My understanding is that it would be extra precaution, an extra eye, and actually evaluating every single aspect of the program to make sure that the students receive adequate education. And this is what my understanding is. So we would work extra hard to make sure that we can prove to you that they are receiving what they need. And even though for a temporary time that they did have to combine classes, that they have not suffered in any way, shape, or form, and they are receiving adequate makeup time, tutoring time, or anything necessary. And I'm on the premises full-time. And we have a small staff, but their needs seem to be met. I can cover any shift, anytime. And we have, it seems like enough faculty for right now. I would like to hire somebody that is specialized in pediatrics right now, but that's on the horizon. So I do appreciate, and I think I understand what provisional would be. It's an extra precaution, and I agree that we have to give our students 100% and plus. So if the board really feels that this is what we need, then I'm all for it, because I want all my nurses to shine and get the education they need and prove to the board and Jessica that we're going to do it, because we're going to do it.
Okay.
Can I also explain real quick about the way it's structured, the reason for our classes? The clinicals, there's four classes or cohorts. All of the clinicals are on Saturday and Sunday. So there are no clinicals on any other day other than Saturday and Sunday. So that means we need the 4 instructors for 2 for the daytime, 2 for the evening. Me personally, I don't think that was the greatest plan for a setup, but my mom loved the idea of all the clinicals on Saturday and Sunday. So for every Saturday and Sunday, we do have the instructors that will work another job and then want a Saturday, Sunday role. Then we have 8 hours per week of lecture for those classes on the weekdays. So that's 8 hours for each class, and they run on the same days. So it's difficult for one teacher to teach just lecture and clinical and have long days with the lecture days. So it would be from 8 to 4 for one class, and then 6 to 10 for the next class. So it's a difficult schedule for a full-time person to have full-time hours in the program.
Thank you. Are there any more questions from the committee? Okay. Is there a motion regarding this program?
Yes, yes, I make a motion that we approve this provisional for them.
Okay. Did I hear correctly that we accept the report?
Yes. I accept the report, I accept the report, but I make a motion that we move with this provisional.
And it's second? We're now open for public comment. I will take the vote.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. This will be brought before the board at its November meeting. And at that time, certainly representatives are invited to be present and comment.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any additional schools to be addressed? Okay, thank you very much. We will be moving to agenda item 7, update and discussion regarding the Office of Change Management and the business process audit. Staff?
Thank you again, Madam Chair. As the committee members will recall, in the sunset legislation from last year, the board was directed to embark upon an internal audit of its licensing processes and functions. The director of DCA, Dean Grafilo, has directed their training unit, SOLID, their subset of SOLID is the Office of Change Management. We have been assigned 2 consultants to work with us. And we've had some initial meetings earlier this summer, and in those first meetings, we did, of course, try to expand our scope a bit. We talked a bit about, obviously, the licensing, as it is mentioned in the language of the bill, is our highest priority. But we also talked a bit about some of the issues confronting our administrative and support service program, as well as our education program and some of the operations and logistics of the board itself. So the SOLID OCM folks very generously agreed that they would help us look at all those areas sequentially. We have started the process. We had a large meeting. We've had individual team meetings, and then the consultants have been meeting one-on-one with our staff. In doing so, they've been getting, I think, a very good and very deep, thorough understanding of our business processes. They were equipped for these discussions with an inventory, if you will, of our business processes for each of those 4 areas. And so as they've been going through the process of meeting with the teams and the individual staff members, they've been really looking at how things are done and who does things in which way. At this point, they've been completing a lot of the interviews and jotting down, I think, some of the initial findings. What happens next in terms of the licensing program is that they started a process that they refer to as mapping, where they'll identify the processes, they'll identify things that efficiency can be increased, where things are obsolete, where things need a certain amount more of organizational support. Now, from there, they will move. They've already started interviewing with the admin and support service staff, and they've also started interviewing with our NECs. They found out a great deal about how the NECs do their work, which, by the way, is a very, very involved process, as you know. So, truthfully, we're moving along in a fairly interwoven pace. We believe that this audit will take us through probably the late winter, early spring of next year, at which time we should be able to have a fairly comprehensive report based on their findings and recommendations. Obviously, the executive management and the board leadership will be discussing those findings to make some recommendations and set some new directions.
Any questions regarding this? Thank you very much. Public comment regarding this report? Moving on to item 8. Discussion and possible action regarding regulatory definitions of substantive changes.
Thank you again. As the committee and probably a lot of our audience members will recall, the board has worked this year on legislation to augment our fee structure for applicants and licensees. Initially, the board had authorized the staff to seek out legislation as well to create a new fee structure for the schools and programs. As we got to the point where the bill introduction deadline, the committee staff, and this bill was carried by Senator Hill, who chairs the Senate Business Professions Committee, this bill was, SB 1480. The committee staff in the senator's office asked us, would we please hold on the school fee legislation while we discussed with our stakeholders and with our colleagues in the field about this, because of course this would be creating a new fee structure, and in a lot of cases a fee structure that would be quite a significant amount of money initially. So we embarked on a number of meetings and conference calls with stakeholders and with our friends and colleagues out in the field, labor representatives, the legislature, other organizations like the Bureau for Private Post-Secondary Education, where we assessed, well, essentially we launched the concept. We showed how our calculations were made, what we were basing the fees on. Essentially, these fee structures were based on workload, and most particularly the workload of the NECs. We broke apart each individual type of work that the NECs do. We asked for an assessment of how many hours on a ballpark average would take, for example, a program review or reviewing an initial application. So with that in mind, we devised a fee structure, which of course did not make it into legislation this year. We do, of course, hope to, upon board approval, look into legislation this coming year. Now, that being said, as we've been having a number of conversations around through the field, a number of questions have come up that were not easily or quickly or even categorically defined. One of which was, how do we define substantive changes? There's a number of issues I think our stakeholders have brought to bear, but this is one of the very significant ones. Now, the legislation, if we pursue it, and we hope to, would probably not be so granular to define substantive changes, but the subsequent regulatory rulemaking package that would be following the legislation to implement the statute would provide some more focused definitions. So at this point in time, because there is not statute to act upon, we don't really have a plan per se, but we wanted the committee to start thinking about this. I believe that we will certainly be having a lot more conversations with the program directors and other stakeholders. I think we would be delighted to be guided and directed by our committee and our board about what some of those parameters should consist of, what some of those things should not consist of. So, as I said, we want to start the conversation now so that the board is thinking about this, and as we go through, we do, of course, plan to, in the coming probably 3 to 4 months before the bill introduction deadline, do a substantial amount more outreach, probably some focus groups, and invite some input that we'll be using to build that base.
Comments from the committee? None? I do have a few.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I absolutely believe it would be very healthy for the board to engage in a brief dialogue around this topic. And if we can do it sooner than later, it might be helpful as well as instructive as you begin to work with various other groups, so that we want to make certain we are at least beginning on the same page. And that all possible understandings as well as misunderstandings of what this type of change might mean would be addressed. Absolutely, as we've talked historically about the need to have some type of support, particularly because of the huge, I can't even emphasize it enough, huge number of hours that staff gives in the review of programs, preparation of the reports, the work not only with the visitation, but all of the debriefing with individual schools following that work. We really have to address it in some way, and without something that helps or requires applicants, in this case, new schools or those making change, to at least be on the same page, we will continue to have staff, and I'm not fighting work, but in some cases, it's been my observation that at times they receive reports that are not even reports or requests, that are missing multiple elements, and the time it takes to get the information, et cetera, means there are other schools waiting in line and their needs are not being addressed.
That's a terrific summation of the situation. My recommendation at this point would probably be to work with the staff to set up conference calls, video webcast calls, and hopefully some in-person visits. And we'll certainly keep this committee and the executive committee apprised so that hopefully you can join us.
Sounds like a great idea. Thank you so much. Public comment regarding this agenda item. Please approach and identify yourself.
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Scott Neal, and I am the director of the Vocational Nursing Program at Santa Rosa Junior College. So regarding this substantive changes, which I believe, I can't remember when it was in May or when we had a meeting here last, and this was the first that we learned that there may be some proposed changes in fee structures. I took this information back to our Dean of Health Sciences, as well as to, at the then time, Director, Dr. Ana Valdez, to discuss this. And being from the community college environment, as it's been explained to me, if there is a fee for approval, a significant fee for reaccreditation, for example, as it was explained to me, that this fee can't simply be passed on to our students in public education. I don't know if that is right or not, but that's what was explained to me. And so we have multiple health science programs, registered nursing program, an associate degree nursing program, a dental hygiene program, dental assisting program, and apparently none of these other programs has any fee which is imposed on the accreditation of the schools. And so this raises a question of how do we digest this fee, and how do we incorporate it into our cost of providing education to our students. And so that was one of the reasons why I came to this meeting, hopefully to learn more information about where the board intends to go with this fee structure and where we stand and at what point we will need to implement this. Our program is longstanding. I believe the vocational nursing program at Santa Rosa Junior College has been around since 1955.
It's one of our older.
Here we are. And so this is a significant change, and so we simply seek more information about where we stand on this. Thank you.
Thank you. And of course, as there are stakeholder events, we encourage presence and engagement of not just Santa Rosa, but other community colleges, because it sounds as if you were speaking for a larger group. Okay. Other public comment? Next agenda item. Suggestion for future agenda items. Colleague committee members?
Nothing for the future, but I did want Ms. Jessica to speak a little bit about the online presence, or no, who was I speaking to earlier about the online presence that we're having a lot more, and the exposure that the schools are having online.
You please
That's
speak
right.
into the mic.
I was just commenting earlier.
We'll let you sit down then so you can speak directly into the mic.
I was commenting earlier. Okay. That when I came in, I always greet the Education Committee, and I was telling them how we are so pleased at many of the things that we now have that we function with. We're coming into the 21st century. But in addition to that, I was telling them that at this point, one of our NECs, who is very techie, brought up and told us that she has the capability with some of her directors to use FaceTime. So several of my directors also have that capability, and I do. So when we're doing the PRSs, the program record surveys for continued accreditation, I have now approached several of our directors via FaceTime, and as we review the documents, at that time, I give them the opportunity and ask them to give me a tour of the campus, which confirms the resources, the classrooms, and the additional support for the students and the labs. And it has really been very informative, saves us a lot of time, confirms the information they're sending to us. So there are many things that we are now utilizing to confirm and assist these directors and programs in getting their continued approval.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's pretty impressive. We encourage you to continue and to expand wherever possible. Items for future agenda. We certainly want an update on the business process audit, and possibly, maybe, we don't know, depending on how fast it's moving, something directly from the Office of Change Management. We certainly would like to revisit the goals related to the strategic planning, and particularly looking at benchmarks and where are we in terms of reaching some of the stated goals. We certainly assume that there will be additional reviews of programs that will be coming to our attention. So that is an ongoing agenda item. And as we come closer to responses to many of the reports that we as a board must turn in terms to the governor's office, those items that are relevant to the Education Committee would certainly be of interest to the committee, and we would like to see them on the agenda. Let's move to item 10. This is an opportunity for public comment on items not on the agenda. The committee may not discuss or take any action on any item raised during this particular part of public comment. The only thing that we can do is decide whether to place the matter on a future agenda. We're now accepting public comment for items that were not on today's agenda. There is such a mad rush. All right, thank you. We will move to item 11, which is adjournment. Let the record show it is 3:03, and this meeting of October 1 of the Education Committee is officially adjourned. Thank you.